Never any talk of family or someone he might be close to on down the years. He outgrew his youthful epilepsy, if not necessarily big bad's effect knocking him about, but Pat says he had no seizures as an adult, not till his last days. Agitated or distraught, he rarely lost his touch of grace. Counting himself a follower of most religions known to man, bridled his enthusiasms were not. Making his rounds, he denuded the landscape of litter, his way giving back. An avid trash picker-upper. Folks would freak when he went in their yard, maybe even to address the weeds. Remarkable, really, such care, given the hurdles he leapt daily by bicycle, carrying everything he owned, everywhere he'd go. A tent, no help, since he had 3 events planned that day. His life stuff in a tent left exposed. Seeking storage, he took a pen to pending federal housing policy, and yes, changed the nascent policy. He knew many of us, and we knew him, but did anyone truly garner the man within? Not bloody lightly, not if he could help it. How old am I, he'd say. I'm whatever age you want to make me. Offered a ride in the rain? No thanks, I have my bicycle. Your question's too direct. He'd stare over your shoulder, and that was that. And he never said where he slept, though morning might find him on your porch. Okay, my plan was to, I skip a section, as is appropriate, where I talk about his political activism for homeless issues and environmentalism and racial justice and any number of things, his life on the streets, etc. Among his fellows with wet feet, at the long table with paper plates, some folks may be unsettled. He kept to himself or chatted with the volunteers. That won't win friends among his peers, his fellows, the other folks with wet feet. Sure, he was homeless, he'd be the first to say, but he didn't let it define him. A big fan, Melissa, who had taken him to the hospital, admits not everyone was crazy about it. For Barry wanted everyone, no matter who, to embrace his lifelong quest for justice. For justice, environmentalism, human rights, world peace, all them trifles. Buttonholing anyone who'd listen, lest the day's inequity burn him deep within. Do you know what's going on up there? They're cutting down the trees. Rising above his perceived station, he wasn't popular with those at the table with the paper plates who disdained his hither and yon reading, lecture, concert series, have bike, will travel. A persnickety self-righteous champion of the way things shoulda ought to be, and self-appointed judge and jury of the sandwich line. Diffuse, don't accuse is one way to put it. Barry didn't adopt that. 60 growling stomachs crowding forward, someone cutting the line, expressing his displeasure. Barry wanted the injustice acknowledged to assuage his distress. A black eye and taped up glasses, the result. Getting some charity to fix those glasses stoically added to his list of houseless logistics. On a good day, you'd talk to him like a regular Joe, contending you and he, as Joes do, him citing sources you never knew. But well beyond boggy existentialists, clarity, humor, and heartburn trailing in his wake. He was fun. He really was. The thickets he landed made sense nonetheless. Ask the Portland State physicists the history of science they're schmoozing. City Commissioner Nick Fish, who got to know him at the temple, called him one of the smartest people I ever met. Fumbling the notes playing the recorder, Linda says he invented his own musical notation. He dropped gems, disabusing you of American myth. But nothing he said was truly surprising. Amazing, yes, but grounded. Not surprising at all, come to think of it. His demons dormant, music or a lecture the night before, much that was marvelous to share. Did you hear the music last night at First Congregational? Oh, you should have been there to hear, he'd say. The good Barry with the shining eyes. Though who are we to say? We that fortune has graced with a door and a fridge, us blessed with a sober father, healthy mother, and no big bad bespoiling. Sparring like regular Joes, a discussion, a diversion in your day. To Barry, it was much more. Till off you went to your couch, your fridge, your locked door, and Barry went off to wherever he'd go. The porch of the evening or that week's snug, the stars up above, peering up at you through that one cracked lens that diminished him so. Just so damn sad on top of everything else. Life tough enough. His glasses broke. Why can't you dial it back, Barry? Why not be smart around folks not welcoming disputation like you and I? His journal offers an answer. He wrote in his journal, quote, "Don't want others to try to disparage, condescend my values, aspirations. Hard enough as it is without unclear working against me." Without, and I looked, I could not make out the word. And O for penmanship sufficient to fill the gap of just what exactly was working against him. The mystery here, foiled by penmanship. Me, I feel the shame of it still. One snowy night, buffaloing Barry from my porch. He'd slept there the week before and had a meal such that his teeth would allow, and came inside to the bathroom more than once, morning and night. The problem was, this was during initial peak COVID, that first year. No vax, people dying in droves. I had family in that house, 2 bouts with cancer behind them. Their risks, not to mention mine, averred high by those said to know. It was a selfish, risk-averse time. Life in a bubble, family sealed off, kids home at pretend school, trying not to breathe, buying a beer in a bodega, holding your breath, the clerk wanting you out the door. Remember all that? The porch was one thing, that first time spontaneous. Finding him huddled by the COVID shuttered library, his former haunt. But not just showing up like that, says me, who's always enjoyed a roof. Not to pierce my home's COVID bubble 3-4 times a night as he came in and out. And if welcomed that night, what of the next night? And then again more. Too scared to welcome someone with Barry's wide dealings with a COVID-ridden world? Could a hospital bed, a respirator be found for my family if needed? So I huffed and I puffed and I sent this poor guy shivering off into the night. I feel awful about it still. Plague's grim necessity, the excuse I clutch, recalling what Pat Schreiber said. Quote, "Just know that you gave as much as you could." Maybe. Maybe not. Last days. Cold, wet, hungry, chronically sleep deprived. Think how woolly you get, I get, you get. A couple of nights with scant sleep. Now multiply that by years and decades, plus the cherry on top, all those big bad concussions. But still wicked smart, more than apparent. His steps always tricky, his bike, his lifeline stolen again. The steps grew more slippery, the years unfolding. Hungry, wet, cold, moldering, his feet wet for days, his boots not the best, and then the plague roared up, rearing up from nowhere. Plague times hard, Barry slipped off the radar like so much and so many. Till his marvelous brain was felled by a stroke. Things come full circle since his youthful undoing. Collapsing at a Fred Meyer, forestalled, freezing to death alone. A John Doe we might never have known. An emergency thrombectomy, removing a clot from his brain, he remained comatose. Learning his identity, they called Sam from the synagogue, whose name surfaced from helping Barry before. Inert on Providence Hospital's surgical ward, his yowls of protest as silent as the demons that pricked him yet. But then Barry's mind awoke, and he shed his torpor, says young nurse Zoe Sirkin, Sam's daughter. The hero of his end times, Zoe volunteering hours a day for a man she'd known from temple her entire life, including, and this is the least of it, pureeing his beloved hard-boiled eggs once the feeding tube was removed. Sam and Melissa also to the fore. Sam, one of the first words he spoke when granted voice once more. All his life, off to the races, to wherever he was not, Barry intent on escape. The hospital roof pressing heavy, a flight risk, his last days, fighting with staff and piloting his walker down the linoleum and almost out the elevator, a gowned man in the snow, uncharacteristically seeking 911's aid. Help! I'm being held hostage here. I can't get out. This is a drug house. They're drugging me. Straight edge to the last, our Barry, trying to break free. Out of Providence, his last months in an adult home, not happy. Calling to strangers on the street for release. And, absent for decades, Big Bad back to kick him down the stairs, fate's final cruelty. Meds still a bust, swapped this time with electrodes that did nothing. To go, get out, keep moving. The wind his, not another's. Upbeat pop and was gone, Ed says. Needing to keep the demons at bay. This boy grown old, despite what he'd faced. Despite 50 winners outdoors after Mom died, Dad blotto, the state obtuse in his noodle haywire. 50 Portland winners, a feat beyond you and me. Look at him in that photo there. Hale and hearty at 70, there on the bus, product of a sober life and everywhere by bike. Mastering his fate, 5 decades and more. The world his, all that he could grab. Bound solely by the chains within, chains that he fought and loosed and fought till they gripped again. It took a stroke to hobble him finally, and many friends rallied round. Sam and Zoe stalwart, ministrations tendered, as Portlanders had for years, such as he'd permit. Some of us figuring, everyone deserving, but here was a man among us, Barry somehow different. Even when gripped by that which bound him, someone who sought the light and kept his code. Not alone in life, he did not die alone. His last vision, not a street light, in the sleet. Our common fate claimed this good man. And so, in a lovely gray chapel, strangers gathered, you and all those folks too, happy that this deeply compassionate man called us friend, glad he bridged life's chasms with such wide embrace. Says Cousin Linda, despite all he lost, Barry made something of himself. He mattered, and I'm proud of him for that. Well, thank you.
Put a lot into that.
That, if I may, that takes months to write.
Sounds like you knew him quite well. Or did you kind of research?
I interviewed people. There were other people who knew him far better. I knew him quite well the last 5 years of his life. We met in the Unitarian Church, and he was a regular at the library where my middle school kids were regular. I'd go pick him up, and we'd talk for 20 minutes, a couple times a week.
That was great. I just have a question. I think you said that in his youth, his father was a polo player, that they had resources?
Yes.
How did he end up without resources, or as an adult, or he just refused the resources of the family, or?
No. It was a gradual process. It was one disaster after another. They moved from house to house, and each time the house got smaller. And finally, they, except for the father, the family moved down to California with my folks. We had to move down there because my dad had to go for his work, and they were down there for a while. But then, to his eternal credit, his father decided to take the cure in Pendleton. At the state hospital, they had a place for people with alcoholism. And for a while things were good. The father got a job at the hospital working as a recreation director, and things were okay for a while. But then they went.
His mom died.
Yeah, his mom died, and the bottle consumed the rest of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, his father relapsed into.
Yes, he did.
I was wondering why, if he had aunts and uncles and extended family who were willing to take him in, why was Barry placed in foster care as a teenager?
They were not close enough relatives. They were cousins once removed or something, but they were his relatives. Mm-hmm. They wanted him. He went to a pseudo or de facto professional foster care family who gets paid X amount, and then at 18 the payments stop, and it's unclear whether Barry left on his own or was asked to leave, but he was gone and soon ended up on the streets of Portland.
The family that we had chosen for him to live with were cousins of mine, but on my dad's side rather than my mother's side. And they had 3 girls about Barry's age. They were wonderful people. It was the powers that be in the state who decided that would not do. They first of all wanted him to be with his father. Okay? And then later they put him in a foster home.
This was in
you
63.
tell me. I mean, we were all angry, sad.
So they didn't let him be placed with the family, with his family.
Right.
Because of
3 girls.
yeah. And
They placed him in a foster family, but they were very different from him. I don't know what finally happened, whether he left or they threw him, idea.
They
Oh,
stopped
or
getting
aged
paid
out.
and he
Uh-huh.
aged out, which often happens
Yeah.
to this day. But Barry made his own choices. In the section I skipped, he got very involved as an advocate for homeless policy with a focus on storage. That was his white whale. He wanted storage.
Yeah.
And he got to know Ed Blackburn, who ran Central City's Concern, a good man, as far as I know. And I don't know him well, but and Ed, Ed has access to apartments. Ed would say, Barry, let me help you. And Barry literally, he would initially have to sign in at 8 o'clock before he was given more freedom. And that meant he couldn't go to a reading. I also, in the part I skipped, he was a cultural, magpie and desirous. He would go to readings, concerts, political lectures,
Yeah.
you name it, and you can't sign in at a house at 8 o'clock because the thing doesn't start till 8 o'clock.
Yeah, well, seems like kind of a crazy requirement.
Hey, rules be rules, man. I don't make them.
All right, yeah. No, that's where a lot of us met him, right?
At that concert, I met him
Well,
at
yeah,
church.
So, something for justice? Well, he's more likely to be there than anybody else.
It was funny, I know David just from happenstance, us being, we recognize each other as major figures in the city of Portland. And I said to him, just as I encountered him, I was curious, how wide a net Barry cast? I said, I was in the middle of writing. I said, I'm writing a poem about this guy who died named Barry Sutton. Do you happen to know? He said, yes, I know Barry. He came to Rethinking Psychiatry. Often he was a mainstay.
Yeah.
And
I invited Dan to read his poem, which is quite an opus. And I highly recommend that people follow the link in the newsletter to the whole poem on the web.
what is it, New Mystics?
New Mystics. There's a bunch of lovely photos as well
Yeah.
of Barry. So I suppose I was looking. I had to use the link to find it easily. So maybe if you're looking, you have New Mystics.
New
plus
Mystics.
Dan Forbes, maybe, or Daniel.
No, there's New Mystics. He's got film criticism,
Uh,
dance. He's been running it for 32 years, and one of the subheads on the left is literature.
there,
You click on that. He's got a whole bunch of authors in alphabetical order, and look for those rich scumbags that I'm not related to named Forbes, and you'll find the poem.
anybody watching this later, maybe on Flying Focus, who would like to receive our newsletter, you can go to our website. You can click a link there and enter your email and name and
Right.
so forth, and then you'll receive notices about these events and anything else we're up to. I guess I forgot earlier to thank the church that we're at here today, the Monteville United Methodist Church. We frequently presented here.
I came to some of the Rethinking Psychiatry events that were here.
Yeah.
And Barry showed up, no matter, even when the weather was
One of the
pretty
most regular attendees, yes, certainly.
With his bike down front.
Yeah.
People would try to buy him locks, and he just, he wrote his own book and went his own way.
So he wouldn't lock his bike up.
Correct. For the most part, it was safe because it was draped with plastic bags. You remember, Sam? And,
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it would at some point get stolen.
So,
Now I'm getting teary, simply because it goes back so far. Because Barry was always there, I was very much involved with the economic justice group at the Unitarian Church from about 2000 to 2010. 11, I guess, or more. And whenever we had an event, Barry was there. And afterwards, when people would get in line, ask questions, there's Barry, right on the mark. Sometimes rambling, but he knew what he was talking about. So he was really, yeah. And then Rethinking Psychiatry, we started that through the Economic Justice Group because it is all about economics. I wanted to say just on the, I just read Barbara Kingsolver's newest book. If you've heard of her, it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, and it's called
Demon Copperhead.
Demon Copperhead, from David Copperfield. She gives Dickens at the end, when I was reading about it, some credit there. But it's about the Appalachian area, and it's her area. And the focus on what drugs, you know, deliberately, the devastation. And this is, it's part of the story. It's a fiction book, but it's powerful. And I would recommend it because before talking about the...
Barbara Kingsolver?
Yeah, Barbara Kingsolver. She's a marvelous writer. And this is her latest one. And it speaks right to this pharmaceutical immorality.
Yeah.
And what it has done to people and to our country and all. So I wanted to give that little commercial.